So Luther was the first like bridge for me to kind of connect as an Indian individual growing up in the Bay to music that wasn't from my culture, but I deeply like. What's up? This is Sriram. I'm about to dig in the crates at Okayplayer. Well, the first thing is Bitches Brew. It's the first Miles album that I was put onto. And I think the album artwork is what had initially just drawn me in, and then I was blown away by the music. The second one I got over here is To Pimp a Butterfly. I was living in LA when this album came out, working on some music out there, and I remember the night that it came out, just start to finish playing it, and that song Mama on there stopped me dead in my tracks. And so this is definitely like top 5 favorite albums of all time. Where do I discover music? Mostly friends putting me on. I have like a couple, 2 or 3 friends that are always really just tapped into what's happening, or I just trust their music taste. So that's one. From time to time, the Spotify algorithm, Instagram, for sure. Just little clips here and there that you find where like, what's that? All right, so Stevie is my favorite artist of all time. I don't know if this is my favorite Stevie album, but this one's definitely up there because it has Blame It on the Sun. It's one of my favorite songs. Him too, just his album artwork was so fire. He's looking like he's playing the earth right over there, which is beautiful. So this is up there. I come from a family of Indian classical musicians. There's a genre of music from southern India called Carnatic music, which is southern Indian classical music. And my mom's a musician, her father was, and his uncle, so on. So that's the first form of music that was really put into my life very early on, around when I was like 1 or 2. And then beyond that, when it came to my own discovery of music, it was jazz artists like Wayne Shorter and Coltrane, and that led me to discovering soul music and R&B. I think the first artists that I really fell in love with were Aretha, Luther, and Stevie. I'm gonna add this to it. Just these are not like my favorite Luther songs, but he's the first person. I grew up on a background of Indian classical music, and I listened to his version of Superstar when I must have been like 8 or 9 years old. And it was the first time I listened to music that wasn't Indian, where I was like, ooh, they're doing like riffs and runs and these things that I feel like are very integral to my cultural underpinnings as a musician, but in a different way. So Luther was the first bridge for me to kind of connect as an Indian individual growing up in the Bay to music that wasn't from my culture, but I deeply was passionate about, and he was the first vocalist. So I'm gonna add this. Favorite album artwork, I think I'm gonna go with the Bitches Brew cover. There's something so surreal and spiritual about that cover. It was actually when I first got put onto that album, that's the first thing that I kind of fell in love with before even putting the headphones on. So, and emotionally, like I said, I think I'd describe it as spiritual, grounded, and futuristic at the same time. I feel like everything I'm picking right now is music that really kind of has defined my childhood in a way. This was the first hip hop that I listened to. It triggered so many colors when I was listening to it. I've been working on my next album mainly in Atlanta with Mike Will, and I've been spending a lot of time in Atlanta because of that, and it's given me so much more context to Outkast and their sound. Oh. All right, so this I think is my favorite album of all time, Blonde by Frank. When it came out, I just started dating a girl in Bombay, and I was there, and the morning this came out, put the headphones on, went on a walk, played the whole thing again from start to finish. And I remember on that walk, and I don't really be crying in public like that too often, but Siegfried came on, and I just automatically tears started flowing. It's such I think possibly the greatest album of modern times. And such for me, a point of inflection where I realized listening to his music that you don't really have to follow many rules. You could still exist in pop culture and kind of really push it forward in the way that you wish to. So that album is huge for me. Top 3 albums of all time. Damn. Number 1, and this is not in order of the 3, but there's my mentor, composer from India named A.R. Rahman, who comes from the same city I'm from and started releasing music by way of films in the 90s. He has an album that came out, I think it's his first one. It's called Roja. It's in Tamil, and it's one, the music that really kind of set the tone for my childhood. It really revolutionized Indian music or Indian popular music. So that's number one. Number two, I've talked about it a lot, but Blonde is number two. Number three, In Rainbows by Radiohead. The whole album is just such a point of reference for sonic excellence, songwriting, and just creating a universe that felt really intentional and special. So those three. Yeah. This is just my like hype up music, especially if I'm doing like a big show. I'll put this on. What more can I say specifically? There's just a certain quiet confidence in the way this man can deliver his bars and his energy, which really kind of influences me now, I think, more than when I was younger, coming into like a little bit more of I'm about to be 35 in a month, so like adulthood proper, and his music has always been like a, you know, if you need a mentor through by way of music, I feel like Jay-Z is that. Ooh, wait, let me stop that. All right, I'll come back to that, but this is, again, goated. His I produce as well, and his music is something where it just breathes. Every beat, every instrumental has such a feeling of living and breathing and moving, like you're walking through like sand or mud almost, where it's like that gluiness. And even like I was talking about that To Pimp a Butterfly album before, and that song Mama, produced by Knowledge, I believe, it has that same kind of like you're just like moving through it in a way, and I feel like Dilla is the godfather of that. So when I first listened to his song, I actually pick up melody. That's the first thing that I come from. So Indian classical music is linear. There's no harmony, there's no chords. So I've grown up with melody kind of being at the very center of my artistic kind of understanding and pursuit. So that's the first thing I pick on. Second is I think production and just like ear candy stuff. And for me, it's like takes 2 or 3 listens for the lyric to really engage me. But there are always those moments where a certain lyric is just gonna cut through and grab your attention immediately. So Carnatic music, for those who haven't listened before, it's a highly rhythmic and melodic form. It's a very complex form. There's these set boundaries that you exist within. There's this concept called a raga. And without getting too deep into it, basically a raga is, I guess, like the Indian classical version of modes, and each one is like a melodic universe unto itself. And it just basically gives you these guidelines of melodic vocabulary you have to use. But to make it simpler, I think it's a form of music that's spiritual, highly improvised, and lyrical at the same time. For me, what's always drawn me to it is it's kind of like melodic content, for sure. I'm gonna choose Nelly Furtado, because that's the homie. Yeah, I think a lot of this was produced by Timbaland, right? Or at least the remixes and such. Yeah, I mean, I remember when this came out, it must have been like 5th or 6th grade or something like that. And I had the biggest crush on her, and now she's a friend, so. The Siza album, similar I think to Blonde for me, that song Supermodel, specifically on this one, was one that really kind of that hit me. There's a certain directness and vulnerability with which she writes. And tying this back to what I was talking about Stevie, I feel like she moves with a certain earnest and yeah, she just, you can tell she means every word. And I really appreciate that about Siza's music, especially this album. I feel like there's something in this that felt so raw. And again, for songwriters, that's always, this discovery for me was really cool to know that you can write literally, you can write things that seems almost a bit mundane and very everyday life, and still put it forth in a way that felt very artistic and elevated. So Tyler Joint for sure. Another artist that's just constantly pushing the boundaries. This album has certain like aggression in it, and he was like, I remember the first time I saw the video where he's just like, there's like 5 of them. There's like a stage somewhere in a random like desert somewhere, and it was just very striking. An artist that really kind of like honed in on the fact that he wanted to put forth a very specific aesthetic with every album. I love artists who change their sound from album to album too, like the Radioheads and the Ye's, and obviously Tyler. And then the last one, I'm gonna go here. Good Kid, Mad City. I was trying to get signed living in LA when this one came out, and I remember my pops who manages me, we were driving back to the Bay on a 5-hour drive. This album had just come out earlier that day. It was like nighttime, we were left around like 7, it's like a 5-hour drive, and Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe came on. And again, it was just one of those moments where I was like, oh, this is something that feels really special, and some songs just like very instantly, like a fragment of them go and like find a space deep in your soul, you know, and I feel like that was one of those where I also just really needed a reminder at that point in my life. I think I was like around 23, and really figuring out what the next steps of my career was going to be, and that was a song that just instantly like put forth a certain sense of confidence in my spirit. So that's number 12. What inspires my storytelling and songwriting, and what messages do I hope listeners will take away? I think I'm inspired by like the mundane more than anything else, but within the mundane, like something very simple happening in life around me. Could be like there's an orange tree in my parents' place where I grew up in Fremont, and I was back over there recently and just kind of like looking at it for a while, getting bored. I think it's such an underrated thing, where growing up, some of my most exciting ideas would be just like sitting around having nothing to do, and then like an hour into that, something would spark and be like, oh, this is something I can imagine and think about. So I think that, and it's harder and harder because it's so hard you almost need to be disciplined to get bored now, because there's so much that's going to stimulate you kind of immediately. So I think boredom, the mundane, and then just existential questions is another big one for me, where I think all my music, whether it is dipping into romance and love, or whether it's dipping into speaking confidence into existence or whatnot, I think it's all framed through the lens of just like, why am I here? What is my purpose? What is our collective purpose? A third thing is grace, the idea of grace, the fact that it's something that really glues all of humanity together, and diving into that, because I've mentioned it a couple of times, but I think the times that we live in are wrought with just like jadedness and cynicism. And what I would like my music to do, and what I hope listeners take away if they come to a show or put the headphones on, is feel a sense of hope, feel a sense of sincerity and warmth, and just really just like thaw the numbness that I think exists within many of us in the world today, because we need ways to shut down. But yeah, wake people up from that and be like, no, just feel through the shit and see what's on the other side. And from personal experience, my music is very cathartic for me, and making music is very cathartic. And I felt it in real time when I molecularly change within myself when I write something that I feel is profound to me, or if I sing it, you know. And I think that's what I want. I want people who listen to my music or come to a show to feel molecularly changed. And I think music is one of the most mysterious, powerful tools to be able to do that. What's up? This is Sriram, and I just got to dig in the crates at Okayplayer.